Am I going to call you Alex or Alexina?
Alex is easier, is better because Alexina is more maybe start because people can find me more from that.
Okay. Okay. Well, welcome to the Life in Recovery podcast, Alex, and it's good to see you. I've not seen you for good Lord. How
Oh
long has it
my
actually been?
gosh. So I left London in 2013. No, actually, that's not true. 2014, or 15. I'm not sure. It was a very, so I met you. And before that, I'd gotten sober in Dublin.
Yeah.
And a really strong fellowship of people there. Um, and I felt very lost in London. I was all like, for me, basically, I was 23 when I came in, so 2008. And it was a situation, life or death situation, 100%. I was killing myself. I wasn't able to eat, the anxiety, the fear, the terror, all of it, Um, it was absolutely horrific. And I went into rehab, and I went to a place in Ireland called Cúnmara in a Thai, which is a Catholic rehab center, right? And whatever, I'm a Protestant, fine, grand. But like, what it did for me was take me out of the world, and I really, really needed that. So I spent some time there, and I was doing well with my program, and I wanted to stay sober and all of that. And long story short, people are still doing stuff in rehab, and I was the only girl that could roll a joint. So we were separated, the girls and the boys. So I'd roll for the girls, wasn't smoking myself, but you stick around a barbershop long enough, as they say. So in the end, I did end up smoking. So I got kicked out in the 11th week. They did urine samples, and we knew about that because the guys had been called, and I was pissing it, absolutely pissing it. And I just remember when we were called in, I was like, how am I going to get away with this? I even asked like the long-term residents, I believe Madeline, in the house to like, can you do it for me? And she was like, I'm so sorry, Alex, I can't. And it was the best thing she could have done. Thank God she did that, because what I did in the end was I went, all right, you can. So they were like, I went out and I didn't even do the urine sample. I just admitted it to them. And I said, look, I had 1 week left. And I was like, look, I did it. So there's no point in me doing it. And they were really good about it. They were like, the rules of the house. Like, you're going to have to leave. Take your time. There's no shame in it. Like, this is the nature of an addict, so on. They were really, really good about it. But I remember the other girls there being like, why didn't you just lie? You had a week. You had a week left. And I was like, I'm so sick of lying. I'm so sick of watching my back, lying. And for me, that was a real turning point, that I couldn't live life like that anymore, that I couldn't be constantly just making things up to protect this demon of addiction. Like, now I have a very, very, I get very anxious even with the widest lie, after spending so much time lying to myself, lying to others, being completely. I remember I remember trying to convince myself that I wasn't an alcoholic, or I'd be like, when are you going to find out you're an alcoholic? Because I mean, I was hiding drink from 17 years old, and I was good at, like, because I was younger and there wasn't so much. I remember being told by my friends, which was something that was kind of ignorant of us all, and I don't blame any of us for that. That I was like, but you're 23 and you're a girl. Like, you can't be an alcoholic. And I actually went on to make a radio documentary about that myself, because I didn't feel like there was enough information out there, on, and still, the stigma of being an alcoholic, and then female too, and all that comes with it, and male too. We all have our different problems. But so I can never make a long story short because I'm Irish. Um, But
it's okay with this podcast because you don't need to make it short. That's the
oh
point.
yeah, I know. It's like, oh, newcomers in the room. Like I have to be wise, and I'm just gonna be completely honest, you know. And also, I'm going to smoke this rolly. So because you know, I do still have addictive problems in my life, you know, which I'll get into. But um, more or less, basically, once I left Ireland, I struggled to find meetings that I felt disconnected in, you know, as I'd found in Ireland. Because when I got sober and I left that rehab center, I was like, or Alex, you know, I was like, I could go out and fuck it all up again. And I was like, or you could not, you know, you've been off, you know, I'd been off drink like 3 months by then. And so I came out and I just went to as many AA meetings as I could, like 3 a day if I could. I had what they call the gift of desperation, absolute gift of desperation. And I absolutely owe my life to AA and many people in AA. And I would still call myself an AA member, but I don't get to meetings as often as I'd like to as well. Because just so many years of going around living in different countries, and you know, I need to do more shopping around, is it? I mean, there's no real excuse for it. Just because I am afraid of relapsing, you know. For me, the thought of like I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that if I pick up a drink, it's not going to go well. Because I did relapse after London. I relapsed for a few years. It started with benzos. So basically, my mom, unfortunately, my mom died, you know, in 2014. And the way I see it is, you know, like I'd been trying in London AA. I even was sponsoring women, but there was something that was kind of missing, which I'll get into in a bit, because I was starting to see this whole thing as a spiritual malady, and that I identified with so many people, whether they were an alcoholic or not. The core thing that I kept coming back to was spiritual malady. You know, I've spent my whole life since then on a spiritual path, you know, and I do feel like the principles of AA are very much ingrained inside me. Like I still take an inventory. I feel like I'm of service to the world now, not just like I practice these principles genuinely in all my affairs, you know. But I could definitely do with a few more meetings, because when I go back to Ireland, I go. And so I was at one a few weeks ago when I'm back, and I absolutely love that. And so I am in fear of what happened was when I was in London, I didn't really feel as connected as I wanted to be. And, you know, I was a good 6.5, 7 years around. I was a bit of an AA Nazi, you know, and really like at times, and very able to quote the big book, and, you know, sponsoring women and all of that sort of crack, you know. And the pressure that I put on myself was immense to be perfect, you know. And well, I really care, you know, I cared about like how much time I had, how much time did I have. Now that's completely out the window, because I spent 3 years like basically my mom died and I'd found the dark web. And I was like, you know, the insidious thinking was like, oh, look, you can get benzodiazepines online. And I was living in London. Next day delivery, sure, I'll just do it for research. And no, it was, you know, I ended up on up to 180 milligrams of Valium a day. Yeah, I don't know how, you know. And I was working as a producer in London. I was trying to do this career. Um, you know, I think for a long time I'd been fighting for recognition, you know, of some kind. I was an actor, and then I was a producer, and I did a lot of things, and my self-worth was very much based on what other people thought of me. Um, and thankfully that's not the case now. I mean, of course I'm human, and I have that to a degree, but that's not my identity anymore. You know, I only really care what my close friends, my partner, like I only care about that really as much. I mean, I'm still a people pleaser, but so basically I was convincing, I was like, well, it's not alcohol, so therefore it's grand. And I was living with, I was in London at the time. And so what I feel happened there is like I didn't have the support of a fellowship, you know. So even though I thought I was grand, resting on my laurels, something massive happened, and I didn't have, I didn't, and I wasn't hooking in, you know, and so it just started going back, and it then my housemate at the time, absolutely amazing girl, she was a medicinal practitioner. So she had big bottles of uh, tinctures around the place. So I was like, it's valerian, you know, it's good for me. But she would take shots of it. And I just, the thinking came back before I knew it, full blown relapse, you know, a lot of other things will happen that I won't get into because it's just what though. Like just basically madness. I was a magnet again for madness.
What
All
was
of
it you
these
were taking? What was the shots that you were taking?
valerian, like it's a, if you have valerian, like what I do now is I boil the root because valerian like is, it's like it's a stronger chamomile. It's, you
Uh,
shouldn't use it for super long because it can have, I'm big into alternative health as well, but you shouldn't keep it for too long because it's on your nervous system. Like a long period of time can have the, I'm not sure, talk to a medicinal herbalist here, but if you're like, for emergencies it's good. And same with, there's a lot of other ones that I would have used, but in alcohol, you know, it's 40%. So, you know, I was just completely deluding myself.
so it's like a
And
like a calming effect.
yeah, it's calming, it's meant to. So you'd find like, you know, those things, the herbal medicines you take at night that you'd find in boots.
Yeah,
They'd have valerian and skullcap and things like that.
yeah.
That sort of stuff.
Oh yeah, I think I've had valerian root actually when I wanted
You would have, yeah.
to.
But you can have it in different forms. But the easiest way, I think, to preserve it is in alcohol. So they make it in tinctures.
Yeah. It's
So
funny, you know, because when you were talking about when you was in London, because obviously that was when we met. I remember that you were like, on the one hand, you were very, AA, like by the book, could quote the book and all that, like you said. But then on the other hand, I distinctly remember thinking to myself, you like really searching for something. Like you were like very,
yeah,
and I suppose it was like I saw it in you because I had it in myself as well. I was still very much searching. Like we've got that hole in the soul, haven't we? And we're
exactly that.
searching for something so much. And I think I was just lucky around that time that I think I probably, around the time that you relapsed was probably around the time that I got heavily into the spiritual side of the program. And
Fantastic.
that's kind of the two paths, isn't it, really, that you see of
Yeah.
people like either they do get more into the spirituality of the program or they start to kind of pull away from that.
Yeah.
And then it's, usually the worst happens.
I know, and I do have, like, I'm not sitting here like thinking, like I'm trying to keep talking about this because, you know, like I only recently discovered, because it seemed like during COVID I couldn't find any meetings in, we'll get on to how I ended up in Greece, but I couldn't find any meetings in Greece. And then, or I could find a few, but it was very, what I love about AA is when you have all personalities, all different walks of life come together in one room. And in a way, I think personally, going to the young people stuff too much, which I was doing all over the place, fed into a lot of ego stuff too, you know? Um, I'm not saying to not go and identify, but once again, there was another kind of like opportunity to be in a clique or be popular or be, you know, like have, you know, be wise with what you say, you know, in a meeting and all that sort of crap. And, you know, people sleeping together. And I did that, you know, I did all that stuff. And I mean, oh, when I got sober, the behaviors were still there. And I remember bottoming out on those types of behaviors, you know, like um realizing that, like, I just, the disgust I had with myself, you know, even thinking back at it, it's like, ugh, like I just, no, you know, um, or like, I mean, I put myself in so many positions to be hurt. That was a lot of my life, even during AA. And I was searching, I was desperately searching because this hole in the soul, this spiritual malady that we have, I mean, I guess for me, what happened was, I mean, I used to sit in meetings, and in Ireland, we say the Lord's Prayer and then the Serenity Prayer. Do you do that in the UK?
No.
No, right. So they do the Lord's Prayer. And I remember I used to stand there and I wouldn't say the Lord's Prayer. You know, I really struggled with this whole concept of God. And yet I had met God many times on my knees, you know. And yet, so this whole finding a God of my own understanding, that did kind of take me years. And it's always growing, it's always changing, always changing. And I worked with what I could. And then I guess, like, even through relapsing, because it took me 3 years to get back. I came back to AA. It took me 3 years to stop drinking again. And, you know, once again, very much wasn't my doing, you know. I wasn't drinking the entire time for those 3 years. Um, it's it's hazy, you know, of course. Like, even my partner doesn't know the timeline of a lot of my drinking because it's like, I don't know, like, but
Was it
basically what it,
madness? Was it like chaos?
huh?
Chaos.
Yeah, just absolute chaos. Like, I mean, I couldn't effectively give you a timeline of what happened where and when, you know. So I mean, I wasn't drinking the entire time for 3 years, but I was obsessed, you know, and I wasn't drinking in the same manner, but it didn't matter. It was still the same thing, you know. I knew that it was no longer good enough for me to behave like this. And it was even worse now that I had this information of how to move past it. And basically, long story short, I was kind of, you know, brazenly drinking in front of my friends, but just like them not realizing it was an actual drink, you know. And I got kind of caught out, and thank God I did, you know. And a lot of the time my family would have intervened, but I didn't want them to intervene anymore. So I actually got sober in a hotel room in Spain, and somehow, because previously I'd had to go on Librium, right? Somehow, not up to me, I managed to wean down my drinking, which I'd never been able to do before, because I wanted to get sober on my mom's anniversary. You know, and that was the only way I was going to get it, if I put something important behind it. And God helped with that, and it all aligned together, you know. And it'll be 6 years again in August.
Yeah, well,
And so, and I'd had 7 years before, but I mean, it doesn't, I had to check that, you know, I wasn't sure. I was like, I go 4 to 6 years, I'm not sure. You know, I try not to be obsessed with time because I'm far from perfect. You know, I'm far from perfect. Like, so, you know, like, I still smoke weed.
was your mum's? Sorry, just before you go into that, was your mum's death a trigger in you drinking? Was that the trigger?
Yes, coupled with a lot of other things, family things. I felt like my family were going over the edge after my mom died. And I was trying to hold myself together, you know? And there was all sorts of behaviors coming from them. And yet, when you are the one with the problem and you've proclaimed the problem, you can get a lot more crap. Do you know what I mean? Because you've put yourself out there. So, like, they were grieving in a different way. We weren't connected at all. Like, we kind of went our separate ways, even though we were together. It's confusing. It's hard to understand because I know we all had our own things going on. I'm absolutely not blaming anybody at all, you know. And basically, it was actually, and then it was somebody that actually turned out to be. I was kind of how I mean, of course, it was of my own making, but I was kind of manipulated into a relationship around that time with somebody that he lived with us, and I kept being like, no, 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 no. But then I felt weaker and weaker, and I didn't feel like I had anybody. And before I knew it, you know, I just fell into this thing, and it was a disaster. He must have had some kind of, I'm thinking maybe borderline personality disorder, something like that, because he wasn't who he said he was. And I knew his mother too, because I had, through my spiritual seeking, I'd been in a lot of communes and cults. So of course I picked up some people along the way. And, you know, and I knew that I was in like a cult, but I was like, yeah, but I like the spiritual practices here. So I'm wise enough, I can do this. And so,
Sacrificing pigs and all
well, not entirely, but just like, I mean, one place in particular, which I won't say the name of, it's very like, they really encourage you to just sleep with everybody. And I was like, no, no, that's what I did when I didn't give a crap about myself. You know, I'm not going to, well, then you're afraid of intimacy. Yeah, maybe I am, but I'd rather that than disrespect my body the way I used to. You know, now my body, besides the cigarettes and all that, you know, is my temple. I still like most of the time, I put a lot of healthy things into my body, you know, but I still have issues. Like I moved to Greece, which I'll explain about, and I feel like I'm coming full circle here because I kind of started smoking weed again. And would I say that's the best idea? Yeah, no. You know, like for me, you know, like I can see where, okay, it may not be fatal right now, but I'm very scared of like how my thinking could turn, and I don't think it's a good idea. You know, and like, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea. You know, there's things that I will be addictive with to numb out, you know. Thankfully, not a lot of it is substance based. Like, but oof, you know, I will want to numb myself out because of the absolute yeah, that I mean the hole in the soul has gotten so much better for me personally. You know, I feel like I'm now because it started with weed for me, and now I feel like it's finishing on weed because I'm so almost done with it. Even if it's not like I don't, I don't, I mean, it doesn't, it's not that I don't get out of my mind, but it's just enough, you know, yourself. Like when you know that you're the type of person that needs to be clear minded, you know, and that, like, because I know a lot of people have a drink or do drugs or whatever, and because it's normalized in that environment, then they're not an addict. But I'm sure they have the same feelings as me. Like we know it's not great. For me,
Well, I think that this is something that this podcast is very much about, and it's something that I wrote about in well, I've written about this quite a lot in different books, but my first book that I wrote years ago was called Addiction Prevention.
nice.
It was talking about the reasons why people drink and the reasons why people use drugs and the reasons why people get addicted to whatever it is that they get addicted to. And the common denominator with all addictions is dopamine. Every
Mm.
single substance that you use and every single behavior that you enjoy, obviously, it floods your brain with dopamine. It gives you that reward. It gives you that feeling of sedation,
Yeah,
whatever it is, whatever floats your boat. And in my particular case, and in your particular case as well, alcohol really, really worked because not only did it give you that euphoria, but it also completely switched you off to your emotions. It completely,
completely.
like the blackout is like the best. you only get that level of blackout, and I've never done heroin, but apparently with heroin you get that same level of blackout.
Wow.
And alcohol, people talk about like doing heroin for the first time, like getting an embrace from God and all that kind of stuff. So it's this warmth and feeling and all, but with alcohol specifically, it completely numbs you out or it sends you to blackout and then you don't feel anything. So when you start smoking weed or when you do, even like I talk about this all the time about eat, like my go-to is like chocolate or ice cream. So if
Also that.
yeah, so if I if I need to numb out a little bit or I'm just had a bit of a stressful day or whatever, I'll sit down in front of my favorite, Netflix show.
Absolutely.
I'll watch Netflix, zone out, eat a flipping full tub of Ben and Jerry's, and then that is where that's
My
my
man.
yeah, that's my level. And it'll be the same.
Next time, if we get to hang out again, that's what we're
That's what I'll
doing.
do. Yeah. And it'll be the same with the weed, it'll be like, there's probably, if you think back to when you started smoking weed, there was probably some sort of thing going on at the time
I
where,
can, yeah.
yeah, where having a smoke seemed like, yeah, well, this is not, it's not particularly harmful. It'll just, just mellow me out for a little bit. And in objectively speaking, there's nothing wrong with that. Like,
No, and if you can do it normally, do it, you know.
exactly, exactly.
I mean, absolutely. Like I would be an advocate for weed. I'm just learning that, and it does help me. But let me tell you how it helps me,
Yeah.
right? It does help me because it can highlight, which I can only call like the energetic center of my heart. It shows me what's going on, you know? So often if I smoke, it can bring things up for me, which I don't mind in a way because it's a shortcut through it in a way. It's like brought it up for me, but in that sense, I just like, and I remember when I first started smoking weed, I thought to myself, oof, I feel like how I think everybody else looks, you know, like it relieved something in me. And I mean, I used to smoke very heavily then. I wouldn't say I do now, but I mean, it's a very different experience now because I mean, I get really light stuff. I'm not on massive strains of, we have like Albanian weed here. And it's nice from time to time, but it just, when something is just like if a bit off, like it's just I just don't want to be controlled by any substance. And I was on basically before I didn't realize this, but I'd had a heart condition my whole life. And I never realized until, and I kind of was, I would have seen about 18 doctors about my anxiety, right? And nobody checked my heart, which is a bit mad when I think back, you know. They'd be like, oh, and especially like in the NHS, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, go, 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 your pulse is a little bit elevated. You're probably nervous at the doctor. No, I had Wolf Parkinson White syndrome, which is an extra pathway in the heart. So my body was working overtime. And I had been gaslit like to the extent that when it was triggered, I was convinced it was a panic attack, even though I was not panicky. Everything that happens before death happened. I went on a run and I wasn't paying attention to my body. And then I literally crawled home. Like I wasn't on anything. I was sober. Like I wasn't smoking weed. I wasn't on anything besides like an antidepressant, right? And basically, I crawled home, I puked, I shat myself. Everything that happens before death happened. And I still was just like, I just need to lie down. This is weird. Okay, I'll take a propranolol, which they'd given me because they thought I was. So this is kind of part of it. I think it was like the benzos wouldn't heal the anxiety at all. It was later that I got addicted to them because I had a really high tolerance for them. Um, it was this heart condition, which came first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, I don't know, but the reality is I had a resting heart rate of about 120. Like when I ended up in hospital, because a friend rang me and I rang the NHS helpline And she was like, I'm going to call you an ambulance. I was like, no, 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 please don't, please don't, please don't. You know, I was worried again that it was an anxiety attack and it was all in my head, you know, and I was going to take a bed away or a service away from somebody else when I was actually like, it's one of those drop dead conditions, you know. And I went in, they put an ECG on me, and then they started ripping it off. And then the next thing I saw was resuscitation. And yeah, they had to shock my heart and all of that. And then they kept me in the hospital for a week. I had an ablation. It's really easy to cure. They go up through the major arteries and they burn it off. I had to do that twice in the hospital. But the whole time I had a portable monitor on me. And the nurses would come chasing after me, and this is before it was fixed. And they'd be like, "Are you all right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine." They're like, "Your heart rate's 150." And I'm like, "I'm brushing my teeth or I'm pulling out a plug." And my body was under all of that stress. My mind was under all of that stress. So nothing, like, it was pure, everything was psychosomatic. It felt like, you know, it was just, I don't know what came first, but I was born with this.
When did you get
Anyway,
that? When was it that you got that fixed?
2010.
Okay.
So I still managed to relapse afterwards. So it's not like that's the problem, if that makes sense.
It wasn't the
But
cause, but it was definitely
it
not.
was not helpful, you know. So now, you know, I'm on the lowest amount of pharmaceutical medication that I'm on, because I mean I have a generalized anxiety disorder, generalized, but I don't. I mean, I if people have issues with, you know, psychiatric issues, listen to your doctor, do or and yourself. For me, I don't want to be on any, like, I'm now on the lowest amount ever, finally, because I'm on an antidepressant that's very hard to come off. And every time I've tried to come off it as per doctor's orders, I have experienced vertigo, all sorts as my brain chemistry tried to rebalance. And no doctor told me that,
Yeah,
what
which
was happening. They're like, oh, go back on it. It was actually my friends that were in alternative medicine that told me what was going on,
yeah.
you know, that my serotonin and everything was, you know, probably know. Yeah, I didn't know
Which
that
antidepressant was it?
it's venlafaxine or Effexor.
Ah, right. I've not heard of that before.
Oof. Well, listen, if it works, it works for some people. I don't feel like it's ever worked for me. I don't feel like pharmaceuticals have helped me. I feel like I've put in all the hard work myself with the grace of God, really, you know.
I've just
So,
come off sertraline. I was on sertraline for a year,
mm,
and it was the first time that I'd ever been on an antidepressant. And you know, like similar to you, I've experienced anxiety and depression pretty much most of my life.
yeah,
Um, First time I'd ever been on it, and it was primarily triggered because of the whole COVID situation and what was going on there. Anyway, I went on it for a year, and although it certainly, don't get me wrong, it definitely helped with my mood, but the side effects of it, I just couldn't. I thought to myself, I'm not going to stay on this for the rest of my life because
mm,
it didn't. The worst side effect of it, and I suppose it isn't even a side effect; it's more of the actual effect. Is that not only does it numb your depression, it obviously numbs your joy as well. So you
I
don't get to experience like the full range of emotions. So I came off
absolutely.
it. Yeah, I came off it like about 6 months ago.
Well done, yeah.
And initially, I'd say I'm just about coming back to normal calibration. I'd say I've recently had like some like been a lot of stuff's been going on at work again. I've recently had like a bad period, but um generally like the calibration of like that ratio of good days to bad days is much better now.
Oh, that's brilliant, because it can be so, yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that, because that's what I felt. I knew it was kind of dulling me, and I don't feel like it dulled the pain, just the joy, you
Oh,
know. That was what was going on for me, because I feel like the antidepressant, I was still in brutal, agonizing pain emotionally.
yeah,
And so what I did personally is I went slower than the doctors. I just started opening it up and taking out a couple of balls a week and weighing it. And I slowly, now I'm on the lowest dose of it. And I
yeah.
haven't, I mean, I don't know. I mean, you know, I'm female, so we can have mood swings, you know, type thing, but nothing in comparison to how I used to have. And I can genuinely say now I'm not depressed anymore,
Yeah,
which is amazing.
yeah.
Amazing. I feel like I've been depressed since I was 8 years old. So the long and short of it was I I was, yeah, seeking, constantly seeking, always, and I still will be for the rest of my life, you know?
Do you mind me
Um,
on that point? Because I was going to ask this question anyway, but now you've
yeah.
brought it up. My personal opinion on addiction is that even though it is quite a complex thing and it's kind of almost unique to the individual, having been in recovery now for nearly 15 years and worked in the substance misuse field for 10, I can with quite a bit of confidence say that there is always some underlying issues, usually
Mm-hmm.
trauma based, that
Mm.
is the root of the cause of addiction. So you're saying that from the age of 8 you feel like you were depressed. Is what went on in your early years that led to that?
Yeah, exactly. So I was moved country. So when I was 7, yeah, 8 was when I really noticed it. 7, I left Ireland, and I have very good friends in Ireland, very, not just family, but surrogate family, you know, too. People that are very important to me, you know, and they always have been. And I went from what I remember, I mean, this could be through rose tinted spectacles, of course, but from what I remember is I had a very happy childhood playing on the streets, feeling very free, to ending up living in England, which is very different from Ireland at the time, where especially where I was living, like just outside London. Um, and then the next year, Belgium. And I wasn't free anymore. I felt like, you know, my dad made the choice to not live near my school, which is grand, you know. Um, and to be honest, like I don't know if I'd wanted to, because there was like this expat bubble, you know, of a very kind of rich kind of caliber of people that went to this British school that I in Belgium, and lovely people. I have some great friends from there too. But I lived in the city, and I was constantly being harassed from a young age, like a very young age, because we had like a lot of Moroccan immigrants. I had a lot of Moroccan friends too, you know, but there's a lot of Moroccan kind of kids on the street that were just there to cause havoc. And literally, I'd go to the tram, I'd be followed, I'd be catcalled constantly from a really young age. You know, I knew all my exit strategies, and I thought this was normal. You know, I had people come like following me right to my house. I remember people literally stalking me. I'm not joking. Like I'd look out my window, I'd always see this man sitting at the end of the road. I was terrified. You know, I didn't realize I was under constant threat. And the only way to survive that was first weed, you know, because I didn't know how to talk to my parents about this either, you know, and their life was very chaotic, you know. I had a lot of blame about it for a while, but now becoming an adult myself, you know, I know my family were doing what they thought was best, but my dad was traveling a lot. It was just me and my mom. My sister's older, and I was stuck indoors. And when I did go outside, I was harassed. You know, people would put their hand up your skirt. You know, it was brutal,
No.
just absolutely brutal. And I remember sitting on a bus during the day, and these lads came. You know, the bus is empty. These lads all came, sat around me. One of them broke the thing for the hammer for the bus and just sat there tapping it in his hand. And I learned poker face from that young age, where I would just, you know, like act like I wasn't terrified. Whereas I was already working out I already knew all of my escape routes to get up where I was going off the bus, you know. And in a way, I'm very grateful for all those experiences as well, because they have taught me that I can travel and go anywhere and feel safe, because I have like a sixth sense from trauma. But still, you know, I can kind of sense danger before it comes. And I also yeah, I mean, it's helped me assess vibes on a deep level. So, but I felt, I don't know, it was just not, it was awful. It was truly awful. Like, um, and I had like, you know, obviously like my ex was a dealer, all these shady people, and just falling in with the wrong crowd, trying to feel acceptance. And then I'm putting on all of these hate behaviors to please these people, or because they're doing it, you're doing it. And ugh, you know, it's just not, it just wasn't very fun. Like it wasn't fun at all. It meant I could go out drinking and partying from quite a young age. And because it was happening to me anyway, whether I was drunk or sober, I was like, well, I might as well be drunk for this, you know? So I'm very lucky to be alive, because I mean, I could literally cross, I would go to a club and it would be, I'd end up in Holland, I'd wake up in Holland, you know, like just madness, absolute madness. And situations where like just I just hope I don't remember anything else, if that makes sense. Because I have been, especially recently, and you know, coming into a relationship and getting married soon, hopefully, which I'll get back to. But like yeah, I had to really have all those things come back to my subconscious. And it just didn't feel nice, like as to where I may not be able to be intimate in a way, for example, because of these underlying traumas that I didn't even know existed, you know, in the same way. I didn't realize how much they'd affected me, but kind of once I was faced with a partner that's like unconditionally loving, you know, it kind of made me, I don't know, fearful. I'm still working through all of that sort of stuff. Like, I mean, I'm very lucky, and I can. This is where I feel like the promises really worked, you know, because I can't believe that I'm in a healthy relationship now, and I have been for 4 years, you know, with just one of the best people I could ever have imagined, you know, and comes and his family are just. I'm so lucky. I'm so lucky, and I'm so grateful. Like, I have literal tears most days for this, because of like I'm so full of gratitude, like constantly, you know. Of course, I can whine and bitch and moan, but wow, what I have been given is genuinely a life beyond my wildest dreams, you know, beyond. And what happened was, um, you know, Ireland wasn't really, as much as I love my people there, it wasn't really working out. London, never again. Love to go back for a visit, but you know, never again. Uh, um, same with America. Sorry, never again. So I just like ended up in you know, I've been working freelance for a while, so I could just travel, and so I travel on my own, and I feel like I was looking for somewhere to land, you know, because it's very expensive in the UK and Ireland now. Who can? And I didn't even want to save money to kind of live there in a way. But so me and my best friend went to Greece in the summer of 2019, and she's a teacher, so she went home, and she went home for to get back to school, and I was like, I'll continue on. Like, why not? I'm not done yet. And I ended up in Crete, and I had a spiritual experience, is all I can say. Like, it was like I once again, I hadn't even started smoking weed again at this stage. Um, I literally, the air was sparkling. It was like I was in the right place. I felt the inner knowing, you know, just I literally followed the cats, you know, and I don't know, but I knew that I was in the right place. And I ended up coming back there, and yeah, and then I started looking at Airbnbs, and like I was like, what? I could afford this. So I decided I just got an Airbnb, and I was like, right, I'll stay for as long as, you know, we'll see. And was great at first. And then I went back to Ireland for Christmas and I freaked out. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, you're moving to Greece alone. Are you serious? Like, after it feeling so right. And I was also at another stage that it was the time before last where I was trying to come off my antidepressants. So I was being woken up with like palpitations and I had vertigo. I was having these massive panic attacks, and one that I did end up in hospital where they had to check everything, and nothing was wrong with me. I convinced myself that I was having a heart attack and my arm wasn't working. The power of the mind. And I knew at the time that this was happening. So I didn't go all night. I was pacing back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, waiting for the doctor's office to open, and then I'd be there right outside the doctor, and she sent me in just to get everything checked over because I have health anxiety as well. From the amount of cancer in my family, health anxiety is a massive thing for me, and it's something that I'm trying to overcome still. Um, I find that very scary and I can be very avoidant about wanting to go to the doctor, wanting to see this, and just disaster catastrophize in my head. So I ended up, but anyway, I ended up back in Crete 7 days before lockdown on March 2020. And my dad left me at the airport and he was like, come back anytime, darling, love you, blah, 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 blah. A couple of weeks later, don't come back, and I was like, that's grand, because like, I mean, I had all the space to social distance. So I had 2020 was one of my best years. Sorry, guys. 2020 was genuinely one of my best years because I was in, sorry, that's my dog. Jenny, you don't usually bark. Anyway, she doesn't. I don't know what she's barking at. So I ended up on this small little island underneath Crete, which, if you know it, you know it. I won't say the name of it because, too many people are coming now. Jenny agrees. Oh no, that's Connie. Sorry, she's the deaf one. So she can't hear me at all. And I was on that island and I met my partner there. And we just both happened to be both of us were in our best spiritual state of mind. And I wasn't looking for anything. He wasn't looking for anything. Neither of us knew if we believed in marriage or not. I mean, I think I just didn't want to believe in marriage because I think deep down I never thought I was worthy, family, marriage, all of that sort of thing. And flash forward a year later, he proposed to me, and then officially like 2 years ago, and now I'm going through, I have to convert to Orthodoxy, Greek Orthodoxy, which is interesting because when I met him on that island, so he comes from a lineage of priests because you can marry in the Orthodox faith. His great grandfather and his grandfather were priests. And so, being the spiritual seeker that I am, and being in Greece and hearing about, I'm asking loads of questions, and then there's this line I remember very distinctly. I said to him, he said to me, he goes, what if some random Irish girl I've met on an island like brings me closer to my own religion, And this is like a camping island. There's nothing there. It's barren almost, except for some tavernas. And alas, lo and behold, I met a hippie guy who he came back to his faith, And I wanted that for him. I'm very happy for him. Like what that's given him is what I've wanted for him. And I knew it was always coming anyway. I didn't know what it would look like. I thought maybe, like, because all I asked for was, I was like, I want my person to be somebody that's willing to emotionally and spiritually grow. That's the only way this is going to work for me. And I just didn't specify, and it ended up being Christianity, which is a surprise to me as much as anybody. But I thoroughly believe that God has brought me to this place. There's no mistake. I believe very much so that we were meant to meet, that our journeys it's been very serendipitous, like I was already like looking into orthodoxy and talking to his family, and I found that just a lot of the principles were so similar to what we're doing in AA. You know, they have a spiritual father, like it's kind of like a sponsor. You know, it's not confession behind a thing. You have a spiritual father. You talk, you counsel. Um, and also the example I'm getting of it from my partner's family, it's wonderful, truly, you know. And I always have, but I will always have problems with institutions. I'm still fighting it, even though in my heart, I know this is the direction I'm meant to be going in, because I know that through God, that in my absolute heart, this is what I want, and this is where I'm going. My head is like, Christianity, you know, like, because I went everywhere else except for Christianity, because, you know, I feel like there has been, for good and bad reasons, a takedown of the church, you know, like a takedown of the community of the church. Like, of course, we have a lot of shady characters, but we have them in every institution, is now what I'm realizing. You know, every institution. We're always going to have issues with personalities, and we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater there, you know? So, you know, I'm still finding out more about it, but nobody is like, for somebody that refused to say the Lord's Prayer in AA meetings, you know, because I was so anti-religion. This is very humbling, you know, very humbling. But my partner, he wants, for him, he sees like he wants to be the best father and husband he can be. And for him, part of this is he feels like orthodoxy is really helping him to do that. And what I've seen in him, like, I'm just so proud of him. Like, he shifted into this spiritual space for what worked for him, which I always knew was coming. I've always had, this is why I know we were kind of put together, because I genuinely feel like, I don't really know how to explain it. Like, I've just always had faith in who he is as a person, like his essence. And here we are now taking on a spiritual path together. And it's exactly what I asked for. And yet, you know, it's a process, you know. But I think it says somewhere in the book, like, to in our book in AA, to, you know, listen to where spiritual people may be right. Just, it's really, for me, this is a battle between me and my ego. You know, whenever I'm not wanting to go towards orthodoxy, it's because my ego's bruised in some way, you know. But most of the time I do feel in my heart that I'm like, okay, here we are, like, you know, this is the next phase here, because all of my, you know, all of my searchings through chanting, through yoga, through all of this, you know, so far didn't bring me that spiritual peace, you know. Um,
It
and
sounds like you wouldn't have got there without each other.
no, I think so. And that's what's lovely. I mean, who knows? But we very much have been.
That like the point. I
It
mean,
is, yeah. I mean, it's lovely. Like,
the point when you meet someone is that is like that helps you to get to the place because you're supposed to complete I mean, I'm married and you know, we've just celebrated our second wedding anniversary.
congratulations.
Thank you.
That's
And
amazing.
you know, and when I objectively sit back and think about my marriage and my partner and you know my wife and think about like yeah, there's loads of things that you know that does my head in about her, and there's loads of things that does her head in about me, and
Yeah.
well, you know, we go through these ups and these downs, and but objectively speaking, when you look at it, I am very complimentary to her, and she is very complimentary to me, and where
Yeah.
she's at in her life right now, and where I'm at in my life right now, we wouldn't have got there without each other.
Yeah.
We come together for a reason, and not only that, I mean, one of the things I really wanted to mention is like because we've got a daughter who's just turned 4,
Oh,
and
lovely.
like you know, and that's the product of obviously of our relationship, which is a beautiful thing and a beautiful reminder every single day. But I was just
That's
thinking
incredible.
when you were talking to me about your childhood, and I was just thinking to myself, like, because I've got three daughters. I've got, well, two stepdaughters. I've got a 15-year-old, a 13-year-old, and a 4-year-old.
Mm,
I met the 15 and the 13-year-old when they were 6 and 4,
mm,
about that age, maybe 7 and 5. But basically, the mum and dad had obviously split up. Adele and I had started seeing each other, and then I came into their lives. Now, because that was quite a traumatic, like any split, any breakup is traumatic for a child, but because it was handled very well, and the dad's still in the life, and then I came into the life and have acted like a second, like a second dad, so to speak. I think that they've been able, even though it has affected them a little bit, I think they've grown up, and they've been able to kind of deal with it. And I can't see that it's going to have this major effect on them moving forward in life. But I was thinking about, like, my daughter's 4 now, and I was thinking if my daughter, 3 years time, if we just decided to move to Belgium,
mm,
and my daughter went through the things that you went through at that age, it's no
yeah.
wonder why you use substances and behaviors to make yourself feel better. Like, as you said, like you felt threatened, constantly threatened, and
Always.
you're developing these coping mechanisms, whether it's escape routes, whether it's, well, everything was an escape route, wasn't it? Because alcohol, basically, like we said before, alcohol completely numbs you out to your feelings. So that's an escape route from your emotions.
Yeah, big time.
I felt terrible listening to the story. Like, now you're talking about it, but I felt awful just thinking about that 8-year-old child
I
going.
know. I mean, I think about that 8-year-old child too, and
Well, that 8-year-old child, like that 8-year-old child, hasn't gone anywhere. And I think that when you're talking about like smoking weed or anything that it is that you do to comfort yourself, I personally believe that that is the 8-year-old child that you're comforting.
yeah.
It ain't the
Oh
person.
no, me
It
too.
isn't you now. It's like, and one of the things. I mean, I do recommend this to people, but not only people that I feel would potentially, you know, be able to cope with and go down this route. But have you ever looked into ayahuasca?
You know,
Because I've done it. I've done
I
it.
I listened to the podcast with Mary Beth because j'adore Mary Beth,
Yeah,
love Mary Beth, and her story is super important. So I heard that, and I think I'm terrified because if you come to Greece, for example, right, one of the reasons why I live here and I love is like the drinking culture is very different. Like I can go out and really not notice it because everybody's eating. They eat and drink together. My partner, God, like, I mean, literally, he'll take a sip of a beer and leave it there and it'll be there for days. You know what I mean? And it ends up in the sink. I'm just like throwing it in the sink. But so if you come to Greece and you kind of meet people around, they're going to ask you, like, what do you think of psychedelic music? Have you done LSD? Those types of things. And I've heard a lot of the arguments for LSD, right? And also ayahuasca. I think maybe, but I'm not ready because I do also worry. And this is something that when I eventually have a spiritual father of my own, I want to discuss. I'm not sure, I don't even want to say this. I'm not sure how many psychic, inverted comma, tendencies I have, you know? So, because I remember a lot of things as a kid, that I don't know where to start, so I won't, but I'm worried about that, and so in that sense, that's where I am kind of happy to start just keeping on one track
yeah,
because I think I'd make things and really getting to know it because dipping in and out of a lot of things, I end up more chaotic and pulling myself apart, Um, it's something I would consider. And like my partner has talked to me about, doing LSD, for example, for this type of experience to have perspective, not just for the crack, not at all, and that he'd be there with me. And I'm more like, I mean, he's seen all the sides of me. So I would be able to do that with him, but I just don't know if I'm ready, you know. Maybe one day I will be, but for now, it kind of makes me fearful. Like anything that will where I feel out of control, like, which is why, for example, like I don't like I don't smoke weed like when I'm in Ireland, for example, because I don't like being back in that environment where I had an issue and it doesn't feel the same, so I don't really do it there. Um, it's very social here, so it's and my friends don't do it there, so I don't do it there. But it's a very social thing to do here, and it doesn't get me out of my mind, in the same way. I'm just afraid of. I don't know how I could let go of my mind so much. Like the thought of drinking and getting blacked out drunk now just fills me with dread. So which is why I was like, okay, I'll do this. I'm trying to like the podcast and also, because I'm still trying to stay plugged into AA where I can, you know.
Yeah.
I think it's really, really important. And I feel like, but at the moment we're like I'm going through a lot of like in Greece. In order to convert, you have to go through lessons and you really have to study, too. And I'm studying for myself. If I'm gonna stand behind something, I need to understand. And what's interesting there is, so with the Bible, like they work from the New Testament mostly. It's very interesting what's in English versus what's in Greek,
Yeah.
which is its original language.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there with my partner and we're comparing. And he's like, yeah, but that's not what that entirely means, you
Yeah.
know? I'm like, what? Like, he's like, no, because this word has so much more meaning than it has in English. In English, it looks more black and white.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, now I'm still kind of like, still finding my way because I'm still in a new culture. It's very overwhelming, but I don't feel threatened anymore, like in the same way. Like, and also it can be a bit of a brutal city, Athens, but I feel safe because of my past experience.
Yeah.
Like I had an argument with a friend's husband who's from Greece. And he was like, oh, where you live is so dangerous, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it's fine, as long as you have your common sense and your wits about you and you're not walking shit faced down the street in a short skirt or whatever. Not that anybody deserves that. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying with self awareness and luck, too. Like that doesn't stop me from kind of walking down the street anymore. And I refuse to kind of let that stuff take my power, even though I have become more and more agoraphobic, over the years, because going outside, it's so mentally overwhelming because obviously I'm learning the language. The attitude here is completely different. Greeks are either lovely or they're really angry, one way or the other. I absolutely love the Greeks. I love them. They're great crack. And I have such amazing friends here. I'm truly blessed. And the quality of people that I have in my life now is beyond my wildest dreams again. I have these loyal, beautiful souls that are coming from their best place possible. They can admit their faults. We discuss all of these things. Um, but I guess, remind me where I was at again. I kind of,
Well, it's because I mentioned the ayahuasca thing, and
oh
I
yeah,
completely get that, like the journey that you're on. I mean, the only reason why I mentioned it is because, like, with all the research that I've done over the years, and into religion and spirituality and psychedelics, I look at all these different psychedelics as medicines, and
yeah,
like and the medicines on different levels, like and even alcohol in its essence, when it was first drank and brewed, it had the reason why they call them spirits is because it gave you some sort of a spiritual experience. It was all about
yeah,
connecting with something higher than yourself. And then
yeah,
obviously, like anything, it gets commoditized, and then and then it's everywhere, and now obviously everybody drinks it. And the same with weed. Like people used to smoke marijuana. Well, weed, like the original weed. They used to smoke that to have these spiritual experiences. So it's just the function of these medicines as they become more kind of like easily available. It changes, and then obviously addiction comes into play, etc., etc. with things like, so my experience, I've never done LSD, but I've done psilocybin mushrooms twice.
I wanted to ask about
And
that.
I've done
Yeah.
ayahuasca once, and the difference in experience is that although psilocybin is definitely a spiritual experience that helps you to kind of like have these epiphanies and it certainly like gives you more of a feeling of oneness with the universe and all that kind of stuff. What ayahuasca does is it actually, I mean, my experience was it actually spoke to me in the mother's voice like the whole way through. She was like talking to me all the way through. But what ayahuasca does is it's like having 20 years of therapy in one session. So it goes to the root. It depends on your intentions. Like if you
Be
let's
honest, that sounds amazing.
yeah, I mean, if you let's say if you had an ayahuasca ceremony and your intention was right in this ceremony, I want to deal with my trauma. I want to go back to my childhood
Mm,
and I want to reconcile that with the person that I am today. I'm
mm,
convinced of my experience and other people's experiences that I know of that that is what would happen. So
yeah.
my experience was I wanted to deal with like my family issues, issues that I had with my parents, issues that I had with my ex-wife, issues that I had with my current partner that we'd split up at
Mm,
the time, blah blah blah. And it dealt with all those things. And the key thing of it was that what it kind of like fixed within me was you are loved. I've got this
yeah.
I've got this thing within me that, oh yeah, they say they love me, but they don't really love me, or like their actions don't follow the words, whatever. And
Yeah.
it's fixed something within me, where now when I meet somebody or with my family and with my friends and my partner and my kids, I don't think they don't love me anymore. Like I
Yeah.
know that they do. So that was the first thing. The second thing, I suppose the main thing was that I wanted to have this experience of God. I wanted to meet God basically. And I had that
Yeah.
experience. I had that kind of like, when they talk about like nirvana or, whatever, samadhi, whatever. I had that experience. So I came
Mm.
out of that and I was like, okay, no matter what I think of God or a higher power, it definitely is real. Like there is something that exists. And
100%.
all
Yeah.
that's done is it's just made me like more comfortable within myself. So now,
Mm.
like, like the goal is to basically just feel comfortable in your own skin, isn't it? Really?
It is. When you're talking about that, like what I found now, the kind of hippie commune traveling did help in that sort of way. Because I learned, now I won't know unless I do ayahuasca, for example, but I felt like I got to do a lot of that healing um, because I'd be doing it for extended periods of time, like sweat lodges and stuff like that. So, I faced a lot of fears
Yeah.
in that regard. And I feel like I have managed to reach almost psychedelic experiences from somebody I've done mushrooms like once, twice, maybe. Um, and I was quite like 16 or something like that. Similar, like that time when I moved to Greece, it felt like I was on some sort of psychedelic. And it just felt like God was speaking to me, like the air was speaking to me. I knew everything was okay. I knew I didn't need to work it out. I needed to work nothing out, in fact, because I don't know. And I'm okay with not knowing, if that makes sense. And I I don't doubt that my partner loves me, that I know how much my friends love me. I've managed, I feel more of a whole person than I've ever could have imagined, which is part of the reason why I don't want to like put myself out there too much for validation or to get the what they call the evil eye on you, like my relationship to wanting to people to see me because I trained, as I said, so hard as an actor and I wanted this life of fame. And now I couldn't think of anything worse, you know. That was another way of me escaping myself because I didn't know myself. Can you imagine? I look at some of my friends now that are quite famous and I go, oh God, like how much hate are they getting on social media? Because the way society has been taught to to interact with each other is horrendous these days. Like, all I want to be, all I strive to be is the most compassionate version of myself. You know, like I never want to get into that fight where I'm that place where I'm wanting to fight people on Instagram. Do you know what I mean? Oh, no. Like we are just not loving each other enough. And not at all. Like this disconnection that's being rolled out. I think this is all done very consciously, personally. I believe in free speech 100%, and I don't think it should be censored. I just think people need to do better.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like people need to, like, what you're getting is their lack of wholeness coming out through anger and pain and trying to attach it to anybody, and they can do that online, which is why, like, I just don't no, I no longer want to be associated with having any type of kind of public persona as myself, you know, because I am a raw individual. I like to, feel like it's very important to share my story wherever I can, you know, because even though I haven't regularly been going to AA, addicts turn up on my path all the time. You know, God is still keeping me in
Aren't
line.
they? They're everywhere.
Like I was with my best friend, and this junkie came and sat down next to us, and she was like, "This is in Dublin." She's like, "Jez, I love her nail varnish. She like mine," type thing. And she started going into like, and I can't remember because Molesworth Street is close by, and she said to me, she was, no personal boundaries when they're high, like same with me. And my best friend was a bit uncomfortable and at the time, and so I spoke to this woman. This is just before Christmas. I spoke to her and I was just like, have you tried getting to any meetings? Like, are you in a program, you know? And she was like, no, it doesn't work for me. And I was like, okay, there's times when I felt like it didn't work for me. Just go and sit your ass in that room. Because she was like, there's me mother. She's embarrassed of me, da 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 da. Like I have, and she just straight out was like, I have no self-respect. See that guard station down there? I tried to stab a guard and all this sort of thing, all this madness. And I was just like, and we could see her mother was close by and just turning her head and very upset, you know. And I thought of my own mother, you know, and I can't remember how it came up, but I said, she said, "Oh, so your mother, you got so before your mother died, so she was proud of you." And I said, "Yeah, you know." And then she's like, "All right, grand, bye," and off she went, type thing. But I wanted to mention as well, just because of an important part of my story, um, um, my best friend's dad, he was in the program and he died unfortunately in January. And I couldn't have done this without him, you know. He came in only 2 years before me. And I mean, that man literally got in the way, like stood between me and bullets when it came to alcohol, knew exactly what I was doing. I remember him like following me to the shop because he knew that I'd gone to get alcohol, whether I had money or not, it didn't matter. And he frog marched me out of Tesco and poured the wine down the sink in front of me. And I remember being like, no, But, you know, he wasn't a man of like many words, but what he had to say was precise and, to the point, and he pulled no punches. And yeah, unfortunately, we lost a great man in January. Um, and I've known him since I was 4 years old, and I would say he was instrumental in saving my life and bringing me into the program. And what he'd done, what was beautiful was to see how many people he'd touched, and he when he found out he was dying, which was quite a short period of time, he got an infection in the hospital. He wanted his AA book, and he was talking to people about acceptance. And he died in peace with his family around him, singing to him. Like, if that is not the definition of how you want to go out of this world, like, I just feel like he made us all so proud. He made himself so proud. You know, he's a testament to having a spiritual experience and being in the program of AA. So he's deeply missed. And you know, just to see the amount of members and people, because obviously I was in between both worlds, you know. A lot of our friends didn't actually know that connection because, you know, it was private for the family, but he wanted it spoken about it in his eulogy. So people put two and two together, you know. And even though it made sense, I mean, they always took me in like another child, which I'm so grateful for, because if it wasn't for this family, I used to come home every summer. Like, that stability that this family gave me, you know, I'm just endlessly grateful. Um, they went through their own stuff and they've never judged me once. For, I mean, they literally broke into my house, cleaned up around me, you know, when I was in another mess, another relapse. And I just, you know, I'm very grateful that I've had these people in my life. And even though, I mean, a lot of people we've lost recently, unfortunately. Um, but it's nice that to be so proud of the journey that they took in this life, you know, and oh,
Was it
just
it was interesting that that what you just said then about is like he died in peace and had a spiritual experience. I mean, I think that that's like just to take it back to like the journey that you're on and just tie that in as well with like one of the things I wanted to say about the ayahuasca thing was that my actual conclusion to doing ayahuasca was two things. One is you don't need to do it. You can
yeah,
you can do natural recovery with no psychedelic and go down whatever route it is that you're going down, whether it's orthodoxy, whether it's Buddhism, whether it's Sufism, whatever it is,
yeah,
because all roads lead to the same place. All roads lead
yeah,
to the God of your own understanding
yeah,
that will solve your problem, as it says in the big book. And that's the thing for me. But the other thing that I learned about ayahuasca is that if you can't get to that place
mm,
and you really just that there's too much of a barrier for whatever reason, ayahuasca will break down all your barriers and it will show
yeah.
you exactly what reality is, and it will prove to you beyond any reasonable doubt. I mean, there's a podcast. I'm going to send you this podcast.
Do, yeah, that'd be great.
We finish. It's a famous guy called Neil Brennan, who's a comedian who's on the Joe Rogan Experience.
Okay, yeah,
He,
yeah.
he said it much better than I could.
I'm
But
sold already.
yeah, he basically just said that prior to his ayahuasca experience, he was a staunch atheist. And
Yeah,
he said after that experience, it was undeniable that there is a higher power. It was undeniable. So that's my thing. Is that's the reason why I share about it on the podcast and to other people. Is I say, look, at the end of the day, I get it. You're in recovery. You think that taking ayahuasca is going to lead to a relapse. I was exactly the same. But the reason why I had to do it was because I had to
you
know.
wanted to break through.
Well, I had to know for certain. Like
Mm,
I already had a higher power, and I was sober for many years prior to doing it. But
mm,
I needed to know. I needed to know whether is this bullshit or is this real? And the experience that I had was, oh, okay, so this is the reason why religions exist. This is the reason why everybody prays to some sort of deity because they have these experiences, like the experience that you had in Crete, but there's no
yeah,
framework for it. You don't understand. Like if you just had that experience in Crete and none of your previous experiences, you'd just been like, well, what the fuck's this? Like what's going on?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I get that. I mean, I think one of my other, now this is where it gets a bit weird. Like, I feel like from the alcohol and the weed that I've been doing, that I open myself up to really negative energies, you know,
Yeah,
terrible, parasitic,
yeah,
negative energies, whatever you want to call them, but they're not of this world, you know, they're not in this world. And I can genuinely say that, I mean, they called it all sorts of things. I mean, in different, like, through different lenses of different theological approaches, you know, but essentially I had a possession of some kind. I could feel it. It made total sense to me. And I found a great healer who actually helped me remove it. And it changed everything. You know, it was like something that I could almost feel this set of eyes all the way down. Like it was like I was seeing the world through a set of eyes, and I was like, I don't agree with that at all. What are you talking about? You know, like it wasn't in my thoughtscape to have certain thoughts, and I don't have them anymore. You know, it's just it didn't make sense at all, and I felt like it was constantly dragging me down. You know, but I guess in that way, like I'm afraid to open myself up to extra energies, you
Yeah.
know, because I believe that the dark forces can masquerade as the good forces, you
Yep.
know, and I can't be sure. And unless I'm sure, I'm more hesitant now
Yeah.
because I just made myself very confused by following all of these different, so many different things to try and get a reprieve, you know,
Yeah.
instead of just focusing on keeping it very, very simple,
Yeah.
you
No, I
know?
mean, I get that completely as well because you can't have the light without the dark, can you? And
No,
there's been horrific stories as well of people masquerading as shamans that are conducting ayahuasca ceremonies, and then
exactly.
they're
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
raping women whilst they're under the influence of these psychedelics. So, like, this is the reason why I say I'm not recommending any of these things. I'm just telling my experience of it, and I'm just like, because when I hear your story, and I think, yeah, you know, something like ayahuasca could really help you. But then at the same time, you're already on a journey. You're already on a journey, and you're
Yeah.
obviously you're experiencing the the thing is that there's no shortcuts in life, are there? Like ayahuasca,
No.
it's a shortcut in the sense that it's like having 20 years of therapy in one night. But then once you've done the ayahuasca ceremony, then the hard work starts. Then then you've got to deal with it all. Whereas if you're doing something like what you're doing, this is a lifetime experience. Like you're moving into a different religion. You're going to get married. You're going to have children. You're going to spend your lives together. Hopefully, the rest of your lives together. And that is a long, long journey of
Yeah.
spiritual discovery.
And, you know, like, I believe that if it's meant to be for somebody, like to do ayahuasca or something, um, they will intuitively know if
Yes.
they're really listening to themselves, if the right person appears to bring them on that journey. And that's how I feel. If I'm meant to do it,
Yeah.
the right person will come in on my path, you know? Um,
It's so funny you should say that because my friend Tom in London came to me and said, "Have you heard about this?" And when he told me about it, I was like, "Are you crazy? Like,
yeah,
you can't do that. That's a relapse. Like that is just I would not entertain the idea." But then from that moment on, I got this intuitive feeling start to grow inside me of this is something you need to look into. So then I started researching it. Didn't actually do it until 3 years after it was mentioned to me. But by that
mm,
point, I was literally, I mean, you hear this all the time. People say I was called to do it. I was literally called. I was like, I was dreaming about going,
no.
having this experience. And eventually I did. So yeah, I totally relate to that 100%.
It's like, I mean, because somehow, like, I'm being called here now, you know, like, okay, let me explain to you, John. Like, so when we were looking for we moved into this new apartment, which is fantastic. Um, into this new apartment in Athens. And, you know, if you've been to Athens, have you been?
Yes, many years ago. Yeah.
Okay, well, come back, come visit me. You got a place to stay. If you want animals all over you, you're welcome to stay here. Otherwise, there's a good hotel. So, um, yeah, I found the place we're in now is one of the first places I looked at. Now, the only reason why I wasn't going to go for it was because I wanted a bigger kitchen, you know? And so it was the first place I'd seen, but I still kept looking. And in Athens, like, this is why the lockdowns are hard because you're in cages. That's what it feels like. You're just just apartment blocks. Like if I go for a nap and I'm highly like stimulated person, if I try to go for a nap, I can often name like seven things I can hear, you know. And but that's another thing that I love about the Greeks, because there'll be somebody downstairs fighting with their partner, and so later on you're like, grand, so you know, we can all, you know. And I quite like that, like they just kind of fight it out, and I'm still working on not getting offended, you know, basically. uh, but across the road from our house is a big church. Now there's churches everywhere in Greece, of course, but this, we have a view nobody can see inside except for God, right? Literally, nobody can see inside. We just went through the most, because we had Orthodox Easter. We just went through, I had the most beautiful weekend for Orthodox Easter. I mean, the chants, I mean, there's something about this Eastern Orthodoxy that is so mystical and feels like what I've been looking for. Like it vibrates in my soul that you know, I couldn't imagine feeling that in a Catholic church or a Protestant church, which is where I'm from. It's a real, like, it made me actually feel like, wow, like all of the like witchcraft, all of that is real, because you can see they are still doing rituals, you
Yeah.
know. Um, we went to one, and I found this really like overwhelming on the day that Christ was put on the cross in this calendar. They actually put a cardboard Christ on the cross, and they have a ceremony of like bringing him around the church. And I both wanted to cry and laugh. You know, that really extreme, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, what is this? It struck me so deep that, like, and not in a bad way, that I had to leave the church because I wanted to laugh, because I was like, holy crap, this feels like it's real. It's real, you know? And then the more I kind of went into it, like, and really starting to think of Jesus as this person and everything that he's gone through, that he went through for us. Like the whole experience of Easter here is just something different entirely. Um, they celebrate it more than they celebrate Christmas. So, like every day, twice a day, there's services on, and just they don't speak, they chant, and it's like, I swear, like sometimes I hear it and it just almost makes your eyes kind of feel hypnotized, like being drawn towards the sound. Like I feel very drawn towards the churches here, which I never felt, you know. Like now I'm like, oh, that peace inside there, and the beauty inside the churches, the way the Orthodox churches are decorated is so that you experience like heaven. It's heavenly. The colors, the way the lights come down, it's like you're experiencing a slice of heaven. And the people, what I really, really love the most is that there's none of this like, shh, be quiet. You know, kids are running around, people are doing their own thing, people will take a phone call, you know, the services can be 3 hours, they'll go outside, they might have smoked, come back into the church, you know. It's this, it's just
Communal.
real. Yeah, it feels more real and normal. Now I still have a long way to go, because obviously I feel a bit bizarre even talking about this, you know. um because I was so my main issue is my mom and dad. So my mom was Catholic, my dad was Protestant, and that was during the Troubles, you know. And so I was basically, my sister was christened twice to please both sides of the family, and she's 9 years older. When I came along, from what I can gather, I was more or less a fuck you to the Catholic Church. So I'm kind of living out some ancestral trauma, as not kind of, I am living out some ancestral trauma where, you know, oh, I have to tell you the most, if there's any, okay, wait till you hear this. So, I'm with this cultural organization that we have, and we do festivals. And I wanted to talk to my mom so bad, you know, um, about how she dealt with this, you know, because I am Protestant, so I can't be married into that. And I've always seen religion gets in the way of love. That's my reality. And I talked to my partner about that. And I was like, that's my reality, though. That's what I've seen. He has come from a background of orthodoxy where that's kind of all he's really known. Like he's done Reiki, he's done a lot of other spiritual stuff. But he's quite secure in that. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have that. I mean, we went to church, but I remember hearing my dad say, I don't really know if I believe in God. And I remember going, what the fuck am I doing here then? And so my grandparents made it hell for my mom and dad. And my dad, I can still see he's traumatized about it, because I can see the resentment that he has towards it. As far as he's concerned, I've been baptized good and proper. But for Orthodoxy, it's about the mysteries of it, you know, which they don't have in the Protestant church. This is my best understanding. People can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just learning. But so this particular week, so last year at the festival we had, I really connected with this woman that was 66 years young, you know, and Scottish lady, lives in Athens, has a Greek partner. And we chatted and we were meaning to meet up for coffee for a long time. And the summer went and blah blah blah. And then we had another festival coming. And I wanted to talk to, because I'm at the stage where I want to speak to older women. I want to learn the sacred rites of aging. I don't have any work done. I want to be a normal person, like, and I'm experiencing like my sacred womanhood, really, I suppose, like evolving into how can I be a mother? What's that going to look like? Terrifying stuff like that. So I wanted to talk to somebody, and so this woman came around to my house and we're sitting on the couch and having a cup of tea first. And she goes to me, oh, we're chatting about life. And she goes, well, when I lived in Brussels. And I went, you lived in Brussels? And that's not unusual because there's a lot of expats, everywhere. And they move around. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I'd met a few people. So I didn't really pay that I lived in Brussels. So I didn't really pay attention to it. Well, didn't it turn out that she was my mom's friend?
Ah,
She'd been my mom's friend for 8 years.
wow.
My mom had helped her through her own cancer. And she said to me, now I know why I'm here. I had no idea what I was doing coming to this random, because her husband would be like, why are you going to this girl's house? She's like, I don't know, we're doing crafting stuff, you know. And she looked, I pointed her to her picture. She wasn't wearing her glasses at the time. And she went, if I had my glasses on, I would have. And she got her, put her glasses on, and she went up and looked at my mom's picture and went, hello, Hillary, you're still helping. Because
Wow.
that's what my mother was. And what I'm really liking as well, and what is making me more confident in myself, is the older I get, the more I look in the mirror and I see my mother.
Yeah.
So she's not gone,
No.
you know? Um, she's still showing up in my life. So I mean, that for me was like, I mean, I get things like this happening a lot,
Yeah.
too much for it to be a coincidence.
Yeah.
So even though I'll doubt, which is natural, when that happened, I was like, okay. And she said, your mom wouldn't want you to worry about this, you know, don't stress about it. Like, and she'd met my partner, and everybody gets the green flags from my partner, which is amazing because I'm like, how did that happen? He's just a green flag person, Of course he has his own stuff, but
That,
oh,
that's an amazing story. I mean, have you ever heard the famous quote by Einstein that coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous?
I have,
That's like
yeah,
my go-to with all these coincidence things, and I think that's an amazing. I'm just looking at the time as well. I think that's an amazing story to end on. But I want to just
I think so.
ask you one question that I
Hmm.
ask of everybody. What does life in recovery mean to you?
Life in recovery, it's the reclaiming of, not reclaiming. Life in recovery is just, it's a promise that I make to myself every day, because even if I'm not at meetings, I still ask every day to stay sober, you know. I still have to be of service. I have to be of service, to the right people, and I'll know, you know, whether they're addicts or not. You know, we've been given such a blessing in recovery that, and to keep it, you have to give it away. but while not pushing it on people too much. So life in recovery, it's a gift. I would not have it any other way, because I wouldn't be where I am now if I wasn't terribly addicted to alcohol. And I really, truly, what I learned, I mean, I'm blessed, and I'm grateful. And this is coming from somebody who thought coming into AA was going to be the most miserable experience, no crack, you know. And what I got was so much joy and laughter in those rooms, and so many amazing people where you can pick up where you left off, like yourself. Um, so yeah, recovery just to me means loving myself and loving others and loving God.
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much for today. It's been a pleasure catching up with you, and
Thank you, John. It's been really lovely. Thanks for having me. I needed that.
no worries. Thank you.